Bourbon Street pulsed with midnight madness, jazz and revelry weaving through the French Quarter, gaslights flickering over masked dancers. The scent of bootleg whiskey mingled with fried beignet in the humid air. Julien Dubois, trenchcoat dusty and fedora cocked low, crouched in a shadowed alley. His scar, just visible, marked him as a man who carried both wounds and determination. 3 murders: Henri Levine, Edgar Thibodeau, Judge Leclerc, had all pointed him towards Vincent Devereaux and his hidden order, with this speakeasy being his next lead. Beside him, Tommy Satch Russo gripped his trumpet case, eyes darting as he tried to steady his breathing. The jazzman's quip and rumor had served Julien well, but tonight Tommy's smile was stretched thin. "This place is Devereaux's fortress, Julien," he whispered, voice trembling. "If his men catch us, we're done." "You really think this is where the answers are?" Julien's hand rested on his revolver beneath the coat, the night making his voice heavy. 3 dead men. Each tied to Devereaux, all evidence disappearing. If answers are anywhere, they're here. You in or out? Tommy forced a grin. In. Just don't let them hurt my horn. They edged towards the speakeasy's side door, a battered crescent moon scratched into the wood, an upside-down sign for bootleggers. Julien rapped out the code, 2 sharp, 1 slow, and muttered, "Moonshine." The door creaked open and smoke billowed over them, washing them in jazz music and the nervous chatter of flappers and dock workers, men with eyes suggesting more violence than honest work. The mural of a stark crescent moon loomed over the wall, a silent sign of the order's presence. Slipping through the crowd, Julien, in a borrowed jacket, and Tommy, carrying his trumpet case, approached the back hallway. Past a locked door, Tommy's Storyville pilfered lockpick working with practiced ease, they entered Devereaux's office, leaving the racket behind. The office was cramped and low-lit, papers scattered on a worn desk, a safe firmly in the floorboards, and a ledger open, carelessly left on a chair. Julien's finger traced pages, his heart pounded as names leapt up: Levine, Thibodeau, Leclerc, all listed beside shipments labeled to Crescent cargo and fat dollar amounts. This was the evidence: liquor profits funneled straight into the order, the crescent moon symbol marking a mysterious order tithe. The victims had been partners in Devereaux's bootleg empire. The implications were chilling. "Gotcha," Julien whispered, tearing out a ledger page and tucking it into his pocket. "We tie them to Devereaux and the order." Tommy gawked, but the moment shattered as shouts erupted in the club. "Raid," someone yelled, followed by splintering wood and chaos. The pounding of boots rattled the hallway, and Julien's scar prickled. Raids didn't happen here unless someone was paid off. "Out, now!" Julien hissed, grabbing Tommy's arm and shoving him toward the window. They clambered out, tumbling into a trash-filled alley as flashlights swept across the back door. Julien glimpsed Officer Malloy, one of Grayson's cronies, leading the charge, his smirk oily with corruption. This was no real raid. It was a cover-up. They ran, dodging Mardi Gras revelers, crates and spent bottles, blending with the crowd, gunshots ricocheting off brick behind them. The quarter swallowed their tracks as they slipped into a side street, panting and safe for now. Julien pulled Tommy aside, the ledger page like a burning brand against his chest. "We made it," Tommy gasped, clutching his horn as if it was a shield. "But Devereaux know we got in his office." Julien flicked a match and lit a cigarette, eyes steely as the flame died. "Let him. The ledger proves his victims were partners, bleeding money to the order. But Grayson's cops are cleaning up his mess, we're chasing more than a murderer now." A parade trombone wailed in the distance, echoing the night's danger. The speakeasy had given Julien a piece of the puzzle, but his enemies were growing bolder. With Devereaux's reach and the police in his pocket, one thing was clear: the noose was tightening, for the killer, or for him. The French Quarter was a labyrinth of shadows as midnight faded into the early hours, its Mardi Gras revelry humming on, stubborn and wild. On a quieter stretch of Dauphine Street, the gaslights flickered, casting patchwork halos over cobblestones glazed with spilled wine and confetti. Julien Dubois lingered in the doorway of a shuttered apothecary, fedora pulled low, a faded scar pulsing on his cheek. In his pocket, the torn ledger page from Devereaux's speakeasy weighed heavy, its inked connections binding him to the order and to the murdered innocents. Yet Clara Beaumont's cryptic summons mattered more now. Her note, desperate and anonymous save for her unmistakable hand, called him here to meet, alone. A figure surfaced from the mist, wrapped in a silver cloak that shimmered like a wraith. Clara moved swiftly, her heels clicking, her silhouette uncertain, her hood shadowing her face. Beneath it, her blue eyes flashed panic above a plain mask, her breath quick and short. The faint scent of jasmine triggered memories too dangerous to nurse, and Julien forced focus, steadying her trembling hand as she slipped beside him in the doorway. "Julien," she whispered, almost lost beneath the distant thunder of a Mardi Gras parade drifting over the rooftops. "I don't have long. They're watching me." He squeezed her arm, voice low. "Who, Clara? The order? Devereaux? Please, tell me." Her mask trembled in her grip, then fell away. Beneath, her face was ghostly in the weak light, lips trembling. "I'm part of it, Julien. The Order of the Crescent Moon. Vincent Devereaux leads it. At first I thought it was nothing, just secret parties, masks, hints of influence. My family's name got me in, but now," her voice buckled against a sob as her eyes darted nervously to the dark street. "Henri, Edgar, Antoine, they were all members. The murders, the masks, the rituals, it's all the order. I think they'll choose me next." Julien's heart hammered, the scrawled words "order tithe" from the ledger surfacing in his mind. "What rituals, Clara?" he pressed. "Are the murders part of the old legend's blood sacrifice? And why you? What do you know?" She clung to his coat, desperation sharpening her words. "It's about control. Devereaux wants the city for himself, its power and soul. The ritual demands a sacrifice from among the members. I heard him talk of a final crescent, a killing to seal his dominion with blood. I tried to run. But they know, Julien. They always know." His scar tingled as suspicion knotted in his chest. Clara's fear ran deeper than guilt, it stank of betrayal. "Names, Clara," he urged. "Tell me who leads them. Who is the killer?" She shook her head, tears threatening. "If I do, they'll." Suddenly, a crack sliced the air. Was it a firecracker, or a twig snapping? Clara froze, blue eyes wide, a terrified deer poised to flee. "They're here," she gasped, jerking away. "Julien, don't trust anyone. Not even your own." "Clara, wait." Julien lunged for her, but she was already tearing down the alley, the silver cloak flashing then vanishing into mist. He sprinted after, boots echoing on wet stones, heart pounding. But as the alley opened onto a street roiling with revelers, a crew's garish float drifted between them, a demon's papier-mâché face sneering as confetti filled the air. By the time Julien pushed through, Clara was gone, and her confession stung in his chest. He struck a match, the flare briefly painting his weary features orange. Her words replayed, the order. Devereaux. Sacrifice. The ledger, the victims and endgame of ritual and blood emerging from the city's shadows. Her warning nodded him not to trust anyone, kindling doubts about Grayson, Madame Zora's cryptic hints, the missing evidence, even Celeste. The net was closing, and Clara's life, or his own, would be the price of failing to unravel it. The parade's drumbeat faded into the distance. The Mississippi River churned beneath the battered hues of dawn, its muddy tide swallowing the remnants of last night's Mardi Gras clamor. On the levee, the French quarter loomed behind, quiet as a cathedral after benediction, its streets littered with tarnished beads, fractured masks, and stains that neither wind nor memory could cleanse. Julien Dubois stood rooted at the river's edge, clutching his battered fedora, unwilling to light the cigarette that dangled from his cracked lips. The muggy air tasted of silt, fish, and a metallic hint that spoke too readily of violence. All night, he'd wandered the city, haunted by Clara's confession, her trembling voice spilling fear, her revelations of the Order of the Crescent Moon, and the sense that his every step shadowed a larger, more ancient conspiracy. The summons from the docks, terse and insistent, had cut that search short, but the dread it brought was familiar, the coiling serpent of failure, tightening around his heart. Officer Malone's presence broke the uneasy quiet, his cap shading a face set hard by years on the beat. Malone's beckoning hand was terse, his jaw locked. A handful of dock workers and a stray cat observed from a tactful distance, sharing whispered speculations over the corpse. "Found her an hour ago," Malone muttered, voice scraping the morning air. "It's bad, Dubois." Julien braced himself and crouched at the waterline. The silver cloak, heavy with river water, tangled around a figure he knew too well, Clara Beaumont. The riverweed matted her blonde hair. Her face, Julien had seen that face frozen with fear, was now eclipsed by a gaudy, grotesque papier-mâché mask, red and gold, crowned by a crescent moon, identical to the ones found with Lavigne, Thibodeau, and Leclerc. A single stab wound marred her chest, the blood now little more than a diluted stain in the swirling eddies. In her lifeless hands, a severed strand of Mardi Gras beads glimmered dimly, a talisman of loss. Clara. Her name left his throat as a vow and a lament. Julien's hands trembled. The knots that held the mask were precise, cruel, a ritual binding, a signature that stoked his fury and regret. He'd sworn, not long ago, that no one else would die in terror by the Order's hand, not after Amélie. He'd failed his sister, and now Clara. He pressed his knuckles to the scar on his jaw, the pain grounding him. "I'll find them," he murmured, voice a rasp of rage and shame. "This ends with me." Malone hesitated. Coroners inbound. No witnesses, as usual. River covers a lot, but this, they wanted you to see it. Julien didn't speak. The light of dawn caught on the crescent moon's leer. Devereaux and his order were purging their own, accelerating towards some hidden agenda. Each mask was a page in a riddled chronicle, each death a warning. He flicked his cigarette alight, the flare a momentary defiance. Turning from the river, Julien let the street's chill drive him back to the quarter. Time, and blood, were running thin. Meanwhile, across town, Celeste Moreau hovered at her battered desk in the Times-Picayune newsroom. The clutter of last night's assignment slips and stale coffee had been interrupted by a package, no return address, only her byline scrawled across white paper. Within, Clara Beaumont's keepsakes whispered secrets, a locket, a scarf, and the item that stilled Celeste's breath, a slim, leather-bound diary, its pages laced with alarm and confession. By the glow of her reading lamp, Celeste read Clara's script, the voice of a woman who knew the city's darkness too intimately. Amid sketches of crescent moons and cryptic notes, one entry bled through: "The Order meets at the old sanctuary, a place of moss and ruin where the crescent moon rises." Devereaux speaks of a final sacrifice, a ritual to bind the city. "I fear I am part of it." The passage ended with an ink-smeared crescent. The implication was clear: the Order's crescendo was near, and ritual was both motive and method. Clara's dread clung to the words.